Hello, and welcome to So You Think You Can Rule Persia, the podcast where we rated and reviewed all the kings of Persia from Diocles to Yazdegerd III. And welcome to the rounds, round number 5. I'm Sariel, and my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Umberto, my pronouns are he, him. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the last of this first set of rounds, round number 5, where we'll be facing off 5 of the last Shahanshahs that we've had: Khosrow II, Cyrus the Great, Peroz I, Musa, and Narseh. So finally, Sarah, we've made it through the first set of Shahanshahs. We have almost looked at all of them and refused some, brought a couple of them up high where they deserve. But now we get to see which the last group is that's going to interact in the really difficult decisions in the next set of rounds, which is going to be a much harder layer because it's made up of entirely winners, and it's going to become more and more difficult until we finally decide who we think the best of them all is. So that'll be a fun time. But yeah, looking back at the last round we went through, we had Antiochus the Great, Shapur I, Artaxerxes III, Yazdegerd I, and Cyaxares. It looks like, for once, we've been controversial in rounds 2 and 3. But for round 4, we are relatively on the money with what our public believes. Because we had 52% of people wanting Antiochus the Great to go through, 44% to want Shapur I to go through, and only 4% wanted Artaxerxes III to go through, while nobody thought Yazdegerd or Cyaxares were worth going through to the next round. So we made a fairly uncontroversial decision. We also didn't have much trouble with it at the start.
No, it was pretty clear, yes.
Relatively chill. Everybody seems to have agreed. And well, for today's competition, Serial, do you have any favorites? Anybody who you think will just go out first place?
Let me review who is here. I know you've mentioned them, but I need to find the portraits so I can remember who they are.
Yes. So, in chronological order, let's do with Cyrus.
Yes. Okay. Oh yeah, no, this was a really difficult round, actually. Okay, yeah. So we have Cyrus the Great.
Yeah. Then, that's right. Then afterwards we have Musa. In chronological order.
Did we have Musa already?
We did not have Musa already. She's absolutely in this last position.
Okay, then why did we talk about her so much with... It wasn't...
I think we talked about her in the shock factor
round.
Right,
with Alexander, yes. I was like, why was... Yeah.
Shined. Yes, that's right.
Excuse.
Yeah, she was mentioned. She's impressive for a reason.
Excuse my confusion.
So we have Musa, then afterwards we have Narseh in order.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. There isn't really a second. Then we have Peroz I.
Yep.
And then finally Khosrow II.
Right. Well, I have to say Cyrus, Musa, and Khosrow II are my favorites for this round. But
okay,
I am happy.
They're your
I'm
favorites
happy
at the
to
moment.
go over all of it because I don't remember that much about Narseh or about Peroz, other than we painted him as the pretty boy imitating the girl with the pearl earring. But yeah, I'm excited to go over actually what they did. Because with Cyrus, for example, he is very iconic.
Yeah, I mean,
but
they all got
he
shot
is
and shot,
more
so
of a mythical figure than a real king at this point. In the sense of course, he was a real king, but most of what we know and the stories that have been told are, more myth than reality.
Yeah, exactly. He is so far back in the mists of time that he has been mythologized a lot.
Which,
Okay, well, you have your favorites. We'll see if maybe Peroz or Narseh surprise you when we actually go through why we made them Shahanshahs, as opposed to all of the other countless kings that failed this requirement. So, okay, But first, before we go there, we need to go on our round review. So, Serial, today we have a very important round. Today we are reviewing all the Ehrensteins. So, how good were our top rulers at just being good for the empire?
Exciting.
Which were like the best kings qualitatively?
Let's do it.
So, like saying, how well did they do things? Not how, schemy or overall interesting, just like how good a job did they do? So, Sarah, at the very start, we have a bit of a struggle here because 6 of our kings got a full 20 out of 20 for Ehrenstein.
6 of them?
So we need to order them out. 6 of them got an 18 out of 20, yes. And there is one very sad 19.
Which one of us deducted a point?
Which one of us deducted a point? Let me have a very quick look for our 19, which I think it was Cyaxares. I gave him a 9. Okay. You gave him a 10.
We shall see.
That's how it was.
Correct, after all.
So I was like, pretty good. I mean, we kicked Cyaxares out in the last round, so, perhaps he's not as, all he's been worked up to be. But there we go. So, okay, I'll tell you the order of which our best kings are. At the top row, we have Shapur I, our successful winner of last time's round. Shapur I, the second founder of the Sassanid Empire. He brought great amounts of population by deporting them from Roman land into Mesopotamia, greatly increased the urbanization, culture, irrigation of everything, founded new cities, consolidated Seleucid power, had religious tolerance while establishing a separate religious structure to counteract the Romans, which is very impressive, and then massively defeated Romans in multiple battles, took control of Armenia, and left down a very accurate succession plan.
He, was incredible for a reason. Iconic.
Fair enough. Next up in our top 6 is Khosrow I. Khosrow I, again, another case of great king following a great king. He managed to reform the empire. He tried to get it out of the hands of the nobility, making sure that it was all well structured, well ordered, and having an army that is loyal to the king as opposed to their noble lords. He increased, again, agriculture, built a bunch of cities, built Khosrow's better Antioch because he could.
Such a flex.
And so, great. Fought against the Romans and managed to gain several victories. He won so hard towards the end that Justin II lost his mind and started making chicken noises. That was intense. He also managed to take over Yemen. He also stabilized the religious situation of the empire after the Mazdakite uprisings and got rid of all the Mazdakites, or at least their leadership. And overall, very impressive guy. He is the reason that later Arabic authors will call King of Kings the Khosrows of the Sassanid Empire, because it's just such an iconic name that
it establishes a whole.
You're all Khosrows, like they're all Augustus.
Or Caesars. Yep.
Yeah. So intense stuff. Next up, third place among our third in this group is Darius the Great. Darius managed to basically found the Achaemenid Empire. He takes the empire from a sort of confederation style thing that it was under the Medians and unifies it under a common entity that is strong, united, and basically the only empire in the world at that time. Everything else is just crumbs at the edge of it. Conquers India, he builds a Suez Canal, he founds new cities, he puts the foundations for Persepolis, he fights against the nomads and stops their raids and makes sure that everything is nice and stable. He suppresses the Ionian revolt among the Greeks. He is tolerant to most cultures in the empire and overall just does a very impressive job making sure that everything is stable, and he establishes his own new dynasty, being legitimate enough that it will last for another couple hundred years. So, strong stuff from Darius. Then, later on, we have Mithridates II, Mithridates the Great, We have a lot of founders in
I
the
mean,
top
that
20.
makes sense, yes.
But honestly, fair enough. They deserve
This
it.
is
That's
the
why
whole
they're
point,
founders. Yeah. So Mithridates the Great, as we'll remember, we saw last time, he managed to defeat the Saka and Yuezhi nomads in the steppe so hard that they weren't a problem for the next 200 to 300 years. That's an impressive feat. That's very strong. He also managed to reorganize the empire to be, friend to the Greeks and make use of all the different cultures that were within it, since it was coming from a Seleucid period. He managed to stabilize it and give a solid foundation for the Parthians, because before him it was about to collapse and just break into everything. So without him, there's no Parthian Empire. He also established the Silk Road with Han Wudi, the ruler of China. So that's very impressive. And then, overall, he managed to conquer Armenia, put Tigranes the Great on its throne, made sure that was all quite organized, and extended the empire's reach well into Mesopotamia, taking control from former Seleucid lands, and just making sure that overall Parthia was a strong and stable kingdom. So that's Mithridates. Next up, we have Ardashir I, Ardashir the Great, founder of the Sassanid Empire. We sort of covered him a bit in Shapur, but he manages to take over the whole empire from the Arsacid dynasty that was there beforehand. He manages to consolidate his own power. He might have been just a quick temporary usurper like Bahram Chobin, for example, in later Sassanid history. But no, Ardashir manages to actually get control over the whole empire, get the appropriate nobles under his sway, and make sure that, this is now the Sassanid Empire, not the Parthian Empire anymore. He also manages to win a few battles against the Romans. The Parthians were on a long losing streak, but Ardashir manages to win that a little bit. He manages to absorb a lot of the vassal kingdoms that were part of the Parthian Empire and make them fully part of the Sassanid one at last. And then he establishes this new authority of the religion of the empire being closely connected to the actual crown. And that is something that will be carried on in the Sassanid Empire for a while. And last but not least of these top scorers is Cyrus the Great, one of our contestants for today. Cyrus the Great gets a full 20 because, what does he do? He founds the Persian Empire. The Achaemenid Empire is his baby. We'll go through it in a bit more detail, but he manages to overthrow his grandfather, take over control of the Median Empire. Then he conquers Lydia. Then he conquers Babylonia, making sure that where there was once a balance of power of 4 big states, now there is one big state and Egypt is left. So, Cyrus then manages to march into the steppe, invade all the way up to the Oxus River. He also then is a just very good and tolerant king. When he conquers Babylon, he tells everybody, listen, I don't care who you worship or what you do, just pay your taxes and it will be fine. He is hailed as a messiah by the Jewish people because he sent them back to their home and gave them money to build their new temple so that they could worship there in peace, as opposed to being in Babylon where they were enslaved. And he just writes the Cyrus Cylinder, which, while not a declaration of human rights, as is often said, is still a very important document that says Cyrus doesn't care what you believe, just follow the law and it will be fine. You do you. So that's quite nice. That's a cool thing to have. And so Cyrus is the reason why we have one big unified empire that his son will later add Egypt to. But without Cyrus, we have this balance of power between different entities that didn't really move on to one universal empire, as the Achaemenid Empire will be indeed. So that's Cyrus the Great. So out of these 6, Serial, is there somebody that clearly stands out as the best of them all, or somebody who stands out as the least of them all?
I'm also a big fan of Mithridates. Because,
Yes, he was your champion a few rounds ago.
Just friend of the Greeks, And Mithridates the second, or the first? Yeah.
Mithridates the second, that's right.
I know.
The first was also cool, but I think we kicked him out because he was exciting, but not as much.
Really stood out for me. And like all of these are good. All of these
they
are
all
good.
get top score for a reason. Yeah.
I can't.
For both of them, we agree
Yeah,
that they're a
which
10
is
out
so
of 10.
impressive.
So. But is there somebody that you... Yeah, but is there somebody you think is slightly less than others? So, for example, I think that Shapur I is more impressive than Ardashir the Great. That's my feeling. I feel like the son has surpassed the father. Because Ardashir mainly just conquers the empire. Shapur actually
I agree.
administers it and does a
and
better
it
job
is
there.
very impressive that like we have a great king following a great king. But like Ardashir established something new. How secure was it when Shapur took over? I can't remember.
It was reasonably secure. I mean, Shapur had been co-king for 2 years with his father
he did
at the
have
time.
a good start, but also he
and,
did take it to another
like,
level.
It was relatively stable.
Like he didn't just keep it; he also,
Yeah, and if you remember our extra episode with Odenathus, Odenathus did not recognize the Sassanids as King of Kings and made himself that title. As we saw, he didn't have much of a leg to stand on, but the legitimacy was enough in question that people could claim, no, I'm actually King of Kings. So Shapur did a whole big job of stabilizing that.
I can see that,
everything.
I agree.
Okay, so Shapur, slightly above Ardashir. Let's look at another dynasty pair. What about between Cyrus and Darius?
I think Darius, who
was best
Cyrus
for the empire
is that important a figure because Darius also fed that myth. Like, I think Darius is also the reason why we know so much about Cyrus, or, in quotation marks, we know so much about Cyrus.
Sure.
And why this became, like, the legend of the empire,
Yeah, I mean, we saw that if Darius hadn't, like, when Darius took control, the empire exploded into massive civil war because everybody declared independence. That was always a possibility, and we're quote-unquote lucky that Darius was there to kill everyone and reunite the empire because that was in control. But how do you want to rate the fact that Cyrus was this archetypally good ruler, while Darius was
one way or
ruthless
another,
but effective?
I have been basing my judgment of every ruler after Cyrus on what Cyrus would have done, because I did love, like...
Yeah, fair.
I was a big fan, at least, like, I don't know how much of it is true, right? But, like, I mean, as far as we know, both in myth and in actual document, because it's so far back that, history becomes difficult to follow. As far as we know, he was a fairly benevolent ruler, which I did...
Yeah, I mean, all signs point to him being benevolent,
aside from all the stories that we have of him. So... it's so funny to me now looking back that, like, I have been doing basically what every ruler and every historian has been doing as well, which is taking Cyrus as the, like, platonic
yes.
ideal of a ruler, and then being like, how do you compare to this way of ruling?
Yeah, he's the golden...
Actually, since this is Aaron Shine, I think...
Yes, this is actually how good are you for the empire?
Impressive. I have a big issue. Like, obviously, this was very beneficial for him, but I have a big issue with the whole rewriting history part. Like, obviously, this was done for him to have legitimacy as a ruler. This was done for him to, like, avoid further civil conflict. This was done for him to, like, be able to ascend to power unopposed and to consolidate his power. Like, right? Like, strategically, of course you want to do this. It's just a very morally wrong way to go about it. Of course, it's a strategy that works, but I am not a fan of people rewriting history to fit their own knowledge and therefore, like, tricking everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, fair. I mean, on a very basic level, he also just could have
Yeah,
not
yeah,
killed the
exactly.
previous
Like
king
the
and
yeah,
had to go through a civil war.
like obviously he
That
did
was
this for his
fine.
own
Yeah, okay.
gain. It was just good that he then was a fairly successful ruler, because then he did like what he did for the empire, what Darius did
Mm-hmm.
for the empire was also really important with the communication and trade and like all of the reforms, like
Oh,
all
yeah.
of
He
that
did a
is
lot of
incredible and
impressive
amazing and
things.
great. But that came at the expense of him wanting to rise to power and therefore like unstabilizing everything first, and then just spinning his own
Yeah.
tale of this is how history was actually, and if you remember something different, no, you're wrong. Gaslighting,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair.
girl boss, gaslight, gatekeep. That's Darius. And again, like I can see how this is beneficial. I wish like this is not the strategy that I would like to follow. I think
No, sure. I mean, if we're having to distinguish between amazing kings, well, the morality of it is a good
exactly.
way to
Like I can
distinguish
choose my
them, I'd
favorite
say.
ways, right? And like we have agreed that they're both amazing and they've both been good for the empire. I do think I love, even though Cyrus feels to me like a less real person, him as a concept, as a
Mm-hmm.
character, and what he represents, I appreciate more than what Darius represents. And since this is Aaron Shine,
That's fair.
and one of Cyrus's big contributions in a way is like to be a blueprint for further kings. I liked him more,
Yeah.
on a personal level than I like Darius.
Okay. Fair enough.
But in a
That's
subjective way.
That sounds good. I'd
Like
agree.
obviously we have discussed how both of
No,
them
of
are
course.
obviously deserve to be here. And how Darius probably had more of an actual material
Yeah.
impact than Cyrus.
Yeah. Even just
But also
ideologically,
he's
it's
just mischievous and questionable,
probably. And yeah, the last pair that we compare are slightly different kings, Khosrow I and Mithridates the Great. My personal preference here is to put Mithridates the Great as second class to Khosrow I. I feel like Mithridates the Great does a very impressive job as ruler, as reunifying the empire. But Khosrow is having to sort of wrest it away from hundreds of years of structural problems and having to fix it. While Mithridates is building something new, essentially, I feel like Khosrow having to restructure everything,
Yes.
that is a more difficult role, and I think he is more impressive for that reason. Also, Mithridates the Great, we don't have that many
Yeah.
sources compared to Khosrow, where we have a lot more things, which I think in this small part
Yeah.
gives him
No,
a
I
bit
was
more
very
of
impressed.
an edge.
Very impressed with Khosrow the First, as I have said many times.
Okay, sounds
I
good.
think that is a good argument. I mean, like I like all of these kings, right? I gave them a 10 out of 10 for a reason. So choosing between them is gonna fall down
Yeah.
to personal preference, really, and whatever we choose to,
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so now we have a couple of groups, top group and bottom group. Out of top group, which is Shapur the First, Khosrow the First, and Cyrus the Great, do we want to give Cyrus the top place because he is such an archetypal king, or do we want to say that the others
he doesn't feel like
was
a
he
real
the best
person
for the
enough.
empire overall?
No, we
So
were
you
just
think
starting
Shapur and
the empire.
Khosrow might be okay? So
I
we're
think-
saying Cyrus is going to be third place. Let's say.
Where would we where was the biggest change in the sense of going from what was the hardest that someone had to work, and who was the one that improved the empire the most? And that has to do with the situations before they came into power and after they came into power.
Yeah.
Like how
I would say the thing of Shapur and Khosrow, who we're discussing for first place now, is that they both have fathers who did great jobs.
Yeah,
They're both great kings, succeeding great fathers. I would say that Khosrow is probably the most impressive one because, again, Shapur is doing a good job. He's doing a very impressive job.
subjugating the
But
Romans.
Khosrow is doing basically all the same things. Except Khosrow's also having to deal with, again, centuries of structural problems, and Khosrow's trying to like turn the ship of state around.
True.
And also, again, we have, Khosrow does such a good job at organizing the empire and making sure it runs properly, and it will run for centuries beyond him. Like, he doesn't know what the problems are.
And
But
also
again,
with
a
Khosrow,
demerit for Khosrow is that he introduces new structural problems that will somehow lead to the fall of the empire, but in other ways could have lead to the rise of entities after the empire. Like, Khosrow's structure survives for centuries after him and after his empire is gone.
True.
While Shapur is sort of introducing some features which will be an issue for Khosrow to deal with later on.
True.
So I think it's difficult. I think I'm leaning Khosrow.
Also, you
But
said
again,
Khosrow
very fine line.
is also one of the kings that succeeds a very successful father. But like, we also had Gamasp in there.
Yes. I mean, Jamasp was there sort of making a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
Just
and like in between, there was some.
He was there after
know.
Kavad.
Yeah.
He was there at the start of Kavad's reign. So I would also say that Khosrow was dealt a worse hand than Shapur, which is why I'd go for Khosrow.
Exactly.
Because if you remember, at the start of Khosrow's reign, his brother tries to overthrow him, and he's during a war with the Romans, and the Romans say, no, we recognize your brother. Slightly messy, and Khosrow manages to turn it around.
It could have
rules for a really long time.
Badly, really quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he manages to save the empire.
And like the emperor does fall not that long after him. But like you said, the structures and the things that he did for the empire actually persist because they are good, useful changes.
Yeah, and we should also see that, consider this a positive or a negative, but the fact that Khosrow II is able to basically crush the Roman Empire with the new forces is thanks to Khosrow I's reforms.
True.
Without Khosrow I, you would not have the amount of power and consolidation of royal power to do this. Without him, you would be doing the previous little wars. But with him, Khosrow II almost destroyed the Roman Empire and almost reestablished one empire under the sun. But so okay, I think we're saying Khosrow I, first place, Shapur I, second place, Cyrus the Great, third place. And now let's go for the bottom three. Well, anybody you think is
bottom three is a harsh way lowest. To put it.
Yeah, bottom three are the top six.
Yes.
Fair. Anybody you think is obviously lower between these three of Darius the Great, Mithridates the Great, and Ardashir the Great.
They're all good. I already feel bad about putting Cyrus like higher up.
Cyrus is third place, third best king ever.
Can they just share? Why are we doing this?
No, Sarah, we need to make hard choices.
Then
I would say I'm putting in my mind I'm putting Mithridates bottom of this set.
Wow.
Because I think he is cool, he is interesting, but he is a stabilizer less and not so much a reformer. So you agree?
Yeah. Wild.
So Mithridates the Great, 6th place. And between Darius the Great and Ardashir the Great, who do you think was best for the empire overall? Do you think reforming it and restructuring it was best, like Darius did, or creating something new from a previous empire like Ardashir did? I mean, they both take over from previous dynasties and restructure an empire into being more centralized. I feel between the two, Darius the Great ruled more time and had more time to make an impact. And again, Ardashir falls into that mythicized founder role, while Darius is more history.
More iconic. I would have to put
fair enough. So
up. Yeah.
Perfect. We have our top 6 list. Our top 6 list of 20 out of 20 is Khosrow I, Shapur I, Cyrus the Great, Darius the Great, Ardashir the Great, and Mithridates the Great. These are our best kings ever.
And if you have a different opinion, let us know, because honestly, I don't care. Yes. I put them all on first place, and I stand by how this turned out. So this is just symbolic ranking. I am I will not die on this hill, particularly, so send me your arguments. Change my mind.
Fair enough. And well, now we need to look at which are the worst kings.
Right.
So the worst kings are qualified as those that had a 0 in Eren Shine, but had the highest score. So their score is made up of a lot of things, but they were just so terrible in ruling the Empire that they got no points for it. Do you have any thoughts who might be first, Serial?
I mean, some of our kings that were, like, not really there. Let me see who died immediately. Sogdianus.
But no. But dying immediately isn't necessarily a thing. The thing is that you ruled for a long time or had a big effect, but were absolutely
just
useless.
Terrible. Oh my god.
I will say Sogdianus is in the top 5. So you're not wrong. Or bottom 5.
I know Seleucus II was having a bad time.
He's not on the list?
Who did a terrible job?
There's an obvious one you're missing.
I'm going through my portraits for a second. You're gonna tell me and I'm gonna be like, oh my god, I hate that guy.
Absolutely, yes.
But maybe it's a good thing that I've forgotten. I have Bahram II.
Bahram II was quite bad.
The
not on
Bahrams
list,
in
though.
general.
He still had some points. They're not an absolute 0.
Chaput IV also didn't quite make it to the throne.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I think he got like a couple points because he didn't do that badly. Like, it didn't actually actively harm the Empire.
Who did like a bad job at have Khosrow the Usurper.
Want me to tell you, Serial? You're gonna hit yourself.
Yeah. Tell me.
Okay, so number 1 for the worst King of Kings we have ever had, with a grand total of 71.7 points, none of them coming from Eren Shine, is Alexander the Great.
I mean, no, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't thinking about him because I'm like, well, he got points on other things, but yes, of course, he's.
But he got
the
0
worst
points in Eren Shine.
Eren
He is
Shine.
the worst.
That's so funny because, like, after
So
much conquest, right? You would think like, oh, he expanded the Persian Empire, but like he didn't.
But no.
He immediately went
actually,
away.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Alexander the Great destroying a bunch of cities, mass murder of civilians,
Polarizing
subjugating
figure.
Iran, burning Persepolis, having a terrible succession plan, having the empire explode right after him. Overall, just a horrible, horrible ruler. Like, great at
Disaster
conquering, but
bisexual.
my man could not govern for anything.
Nope.
Yes.
He should have been a general. But he would have
Absolutely,
never
yes.
he would have
Could have
never
been-
accepted that.
He would not have accepted
Yeah.
it, yeah.
Then he should have had a good like
problematic
council
person.
to actually rule for him.
Yeah, he should have had an Agrippa to his Augustus.
Yes.
But yeah. Or an Augustus
Yeah,
to
and
his
Augustus
Agrippa,
to his Agrippa, because
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, then second place is Alexander Balas with the 28.9 total score, but with 0 points. He is the last Seleucid king we covered. He is probably an imposter put on the throne by foreign forces, managed to kill the legitimate heirs in Antioch, and it's thanks to him that through his total negligence in being a puppet to the Egyptians, the East just falls
Where
and
is
Iran is lost.
Do I have him as Alexander Balas
he
or
is the
Alexander
one
the
that
First?
where Alexander the First. Also.
Yeah, so out drinking with Ask Ptolemy about me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's him. He's just like
I was going
just
to mention
terrible.
it,
Just
but
did
yeah.
not know what he was doing and just died in battle at the end. Just failed.
Yeah.
Complete failure. Position number 3 is Artaxerxes II Mnemon. Artaxerxes II, he has a really long reign, but he is mostly dominated by his mother,
True.
Parasatis.
Parasatis, yes.
He has a civil war that he sort of loses at the start because his brother wins but is just killed in battle at the end. So that's embarrassing.
I did
Then
a really cool portrait for him.
It is a good one, yeah, but yeah, he was not very good at ruling.
Yep.
He also loses Egypt almost permanently. Like, under his reign, Egypt is just gone from the
Yeah.
empire.
Then we need to
unable
wait for
take it.
Artaxerxes III to recover it.
That's right. Artaxerxes II then manages to have a massive revolt of the satraps against him, which almost destroys the empire. And again, because he is massively lucky, the empire manages to survive because the right people die at the correct times. So all his enemies sort of dissipate because people died at the correct moment. So that's it.
Lucky.
And then Artaxerxes II ends up murdered by his son, and all of his heirs are killed because he wasn't able to handle that succession properly.
Yep.
So, very bad. Almost destroyed the Achaemenid Empire, but ultimately. Next up is Darius III. So, the one who actually lost the Achaemenid Empire.
Yep.
He tried. I would say he was born as a puppet. He tried to adjust the empire. He managed to retake control from the eunuch Bagoas.
Yep.
But eventually, when he had to fight with Alexander, he lost so much because his power was too insecure. He wasn't able to fully respond to Alexander as quickly as he should have. He wasn't able to just starve Alexander out, which would have worked because, well, he was insecure on the throne and he needed a big win to make sure that he was seen as legitimate. And ultimately, the empire was gone and was left to the disaster that is Alexander the Great.
Yep.
Everything just crumbled. So, tough times for Darius III, but hey. And in 5th place, you mentioned him before, Sogdianus.
Yep.
Sogdianus is just sort of a disaster
so
of a
funny.
man. Because he kills his brother Xerxes II, then he takes the throne, has no idea what to do with it, is eventually defeated by his brother Darius II, and killed in the ash room by Parasates, which is one of the more impressive things about him.
Yep. Just
He
immediately
did nothing
murdered.
for the empire except makes the succession very unstable, and that's it.
Yep.
That was all. Just kind of a big failure all around with 20.05 points, mostly for shocking and being a terrible ruler and having a bad death. Okay, and so now that we've gone through all the kings, we need to go through the different dynasties. So see which dynasty was best for the empire. Do you have any guesses, Sarah, which dynasty was best and which dynasty was worst for the empire?
I have no guesses. I truly do not know, in general, how they all come together. Because the empire changes so much throughout time, I don't,
Yeah, that's right. So first up is, in our average scores, is a 9.75 out of 20 with the medians. The medians are apparently very, very good because Cyaxares does a great job and Phraaortes and Diocles do something okay. Astyages is still a bit of a mess, but meh. So they do quite a good job. They're very impressive. They found the whole reason we're here. So it makes sense. That's reasonable. Second place is with 8.35 out of 20 are the Sassanids. The Sassanids do a great job. I mean, we saw before we have Artax, 3 of the 20s were Sassanids.
Yep. Sure.
We had Ardashir the Great, Shapur the First, and Khosrow the First. They're all very impressive. Yes, we have a lot of bad kings in the middle, but we have enough good ones to make up for it. So second place. Third place are the Achaemenids. The Achaemenids with an 8.08 out of 20, which makes sense. That's, again, they had 2 people in the top. They had Cyrus and Darius, and overall, they're broadly quite competent. We also have one of the worst people among the Achaemenids, Artaxerxes II and Darius III. But ultimately, they are quite good at generally holding on to the empire. I mean, it lasts a couple hundred years. That's pretty impressive. They do a good enough job. Then, fourth place, we have the Arsacids with a 7.12 out of 20, which actually I'm quite surprised by. Turns out that I think a lot of the early Arsacids sort of carry this, before all the way up to, say, Phraates IV or so. Because afterwards, there's a lot of damage against the Romans and a lot of being sacked and all that. But there are a few standouts, Vologases I is very good for the empire. Artabanus III is quite good. So overall, we can make up for it. Fourth place are the Seleucids with a 5.92 out of 20, which, again, pretty good, surprising enough. I think most of them, they just suffer from the fact that there isn't really they're sort of a foreign dynasty ruling Iran, and so it's always their secondary concern. They mostly try and concentrate on Syria and work there, so that harms them a bit. And then last but certainly least are the Argeads, with an average Ehrenstein score of 0 out of 20. They were all terrible.
Yeah.
It is just a constant dumpster fire, with Alexander followed by his brother Philip, followed by his son Alexander. None of them achieved any points in Ehrenstein. We were very harsh, but I think it's fair enough, honestly. So, 0 points in total of Ehrenstein. And just to quickly go through the Bayesian adjusted mean and see if anybody changes, the big change with the Bayesian adjusted mean is that the Sassanids take first place over the Medians, because the Medians were just 4 of them with one very good one. The Sassanids had a lot of very good people. Yes, a lot of bad people, but more good people than bad. Then we stay in third place with the Achaemenids, 4th place is the Arsacids, 5th place the Seleucids, and the Argeads are last, as you would expect with a 0 score. But alright, Cyril, now that we've gone through the Ehrenstein, we've had a memory of all the best rulers, it's time to look at the Shahanshahs for today and see what was their story, what were they like, and which 2 do we want to pass through to the next stage. So alright, first on our list is the head of the group, Khosrow II, Khosrow Parviz. He was the last great Sassanid king. After him, it was all just civil war and rulers ruling for like a long weekend every so often, and that was it. But Khosrow has a very dramatic life story. He takes the throne in a coup from his father as a young prince after Bahram Chobin invades. But then Bahram chases him away. Khosrow is forced to flee all the way to the Roman Empire that they were at war with at the time. There in the Roman Empire, he asks for and manages to gain help from the Roman Emperor Maurice. And with him, he manages to reconquer his throne, make himself King of Kings once more. But there, he is under the control of his 2 uncles, Bestam and Bendoy. So he decides to coup both of them. But he only manages to capture one of these uncles, and the other one, Bestam, starts a massive civil war. So Khosrow fights this massive civil war against his uncle. In the end, he is about to lose, but manages to have his uncle murdered, and boom, civil war over. Khosrow wins. Then the empire has a precious few months of peace when there is news that Maurice is killed, and so Khosrow takes up arms against the Roman usurper Phocas in the cause of Theodosius, the son of Maurice. Khosrow conquers 3/4 of the Roman Empire, and eventually the Roman Senate says, "We give up, we'll give you anything. You can choose the Roman Emperor, we surrender, it's over." And Khosrow says, "No, I want everything."
Yes.
And this is where his demise starts.
Yeah.
That was great.
It was such a shame, but like, oh god. The hubris.
I mean, again, Alexander did the same.
Yep,
Alexander had lost at the Battle of Gaugamela, then you would say, what an idiot. But no, he actually became, the king that everybody knows of. But yeah, so during this conquest, Khosrow is great at managing the empire. He is very tolerant of Christians. He holds a Christian council to make everybody agree of how the church should be run, and everybody's like, yeah, fair enough, this makes sense. He loves his wife, Shirin, which is nice. It's good for people to love their wives.
Yes.
It's a positive character trait. He plans a massive relief that unfortunately remains unfinished. That's very dramatic. I teased it to you for a while, but there's just like a massive canvas on a mountain that's just blank.
Yeah.
Because he never managed to fill it out. It's just like, harsh. Ultimately, he tries to conquer Constantinople and loses the battle there because his ships are not able to cross the Bosphorus and his nomadic allies just fail to conquer Constantinople. So in the end, he has to retreat. Yeah. He is finally defeated by Heraclius at the Battle of Nineveh and is eventually overthrown, has all his sons killed before him, his favorite son especially, and then he is eventually executed himself by his son who overthrows him. His total score is a 71.7 out of 100, very impressive. He gets a 10 out of 10 for final moments, 12 out of 20 for battle hardness, 14 out of 20 for scheminess, 14 out of 20 for shock factor, 14 out of 20 for Ehrenstein, 4 out of 5 for face of faces, and a 3.7 out of 5 for lengthiness. I think he is the one to beat for this round, but we'll have to find out. So, very impressive. We'll see how he stands up against everybody else. Next up is a character we've been talking about a lot today, Cyrus the Great, Cyrus II.
Yeah.
He is the founder of the Achaemenid Empire. He is a child of prophecy. If you remember, his grandfather had a prophecy that his grandson would overthrow him, so he tried to have him killed, but he was eventually sent away to live among shepherds. And then after a while, he was found again and introduced as a prince of the small kingdom of Persia at the time. He eventually rebelled against his grandfather at some point and managed to take over the Median Empire, become at last King of Kings. Afterwards, he is attacked by King Croesus of Lydia, who has the prophecy, if you go to war with Cyrus, you will destroy a great empire.
Yep.
It's his own empire that's destroyed.
They should have known this is a very, double-sided prophecy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Apparently,
prophecies are mysterious at best, but clearly this was you know that this can be your own empire that you destroy, right?
Yeah, very much. But Cyrus manages to keep Croesus on as an advisor, and he shows up in many stories. At that point, he decides to sort of take over everything because he can. He takes over the rest of Iran all the way to the Oxus and founds a bunch of new cities. He then conquers the kingdom of Babylon and is extremely merciful and hailed as a messiah by the Jewish people. He writes the Cyrus Cylinder, where he is extremely religiously tolerant. And overall, he is seen as a wise king. He is the king that everybody looked up to before Alexander. Alexander slept with a biography of Cyrus under his pillow.
Yeah.
Because Cyrus is so great and he is so amazing and everybody loves him.
Everyone admires someone.
Look at Cyrus.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Cyrus was the big guy before Alexander. I mean, Alexander crosses the Gadrosian Desert instead of, taking a longer time and doing something more reasonable.
Yep.
Because Cyrus didn't manage to do it, so I'll have to be able to succeed where Cyrus failed.
True.
So I'll do this as well. That's a whole thing. In a running theme, Cyrus also loves his wife, Cassandane. That's nice. Good on Cyrus. And in the end, he tries to invade the steppe and conquer beyond the Oxus, try to conquer the nomads, but ultimately he is killed by the queen of the Masagetai, Tomyris, and his head is decapitated and is plunged into a vat of blood, so that finally his thirst for blood shall be sated. So that is Cyrus the Great. His final score is a 52.8, relatively low, but mostly because he wasn't too scandalous. Yeah. So overall, his score was spread as 7 out of 10 for final moments, 16 out of 20 for battle hardness, 4 out of 20 for scheminess, 1 out of 20 for shock factor, 20 out of 20 for air and shine, 2.5 out of 5 for face of faces, and 2.3 out of 5 for lengthiness. How would you... Do you have a clear favorite between Cyrus and Khosrow, or are they broadly equal to you?
Again, this is really difficult. For reasons mentioned before, right?
Who knows?
Yeah, I find both they're so different that it's really hard to make an argument of one over the other because they represent different things that are important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we'll see later on. Maybe we won't have to choose between them.
Sure. Maybe just adding more people will make this easier.
Yeah, maybe adding more talented people will make it more difficult. Okay, so third place is Peroz I. He is our third lowest Shahanshah, the lowest being Sinatrukes, and the second lowest being Narseh that we'll cover later today. So there's a reason you didn't remember them. There might be some, they might be the least favorites of this round. But anyway, Peroz I was the son of Yazdegerd II. He wasn't chosen as his heir. And Peroz then decides to use the support of the Hephthalite nomads to invade the empire and put him on the throne, taking it from his brother. He then spent the rest of the reign regretting this and fighting nomads.
Yep. The consequences to his actions.
Yeah, because he does the typical thing that we've seen always seems like a good idea but always fails, which is destroying the Kidderite nomads that had been a threat for a while with the help of these Hephthalites that had put him on the throne. But when the Kidderites are gone, the Hephthalites just turn against him because, well, there's no buffer between them and the Empire. So, for a while, Peroz tries to have peace with the Romans in the west, but he does suppress a Caucasian rebellion. This is the period when we're roughly at peace with the Romans. There's no big conflicts. But then he goes and fights. Yeah, he goes and fights the Hephthalites 3 times. One of these times he is captured and leaves his son Kavad as collateral. And then has to go get him. And then as soon as he gets his son back, he goes back to fight the Hephthalites, loses again, and at the very end, he is killed at the end and falls into a hole in the middle of the battlefield and just disappears. This is one of the worst defeats of the Empire ever, and the Empire almost falls, just having to be saved by one of the nobles, one of the great noble families. But it almost falls thanks to Peroz. This is a real mess. But we enjoyed his story. We enjoyed the fact that he just constantly causes his own problems and just constantly tries to keep going back and just fails. His final score is a 38.5 out of 100, and that is divided in the following way. It is a 6 out of 10 for final moments, 4 out of 20 for battle hardness, 6 out of 20 for scheminess, 12 out of 20 for shock factor, 3 out of 20 for air and shine, 5 out of 5 for face of faces, and a 2.5 out of 5 for lengthiness. So, don't know about you, but I would say that out of these 3 we've covered so far, Peroz is clearly in bottom row.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think Peroz is getting out of this. But hey, maybe our next contestant
He's
will.
just up against a lot of really awesome people. Like, listen.
Yeah, he got drawn in a bad round for him. He could have been in something a lot easier. But next one, we change pronouns, Ariel. Musa,
yes!
The only woman to get a shot in Shah.
She's so impressive.
She starts out in very difficult conditions. She is a slave in Italy at the start. She is sent over as a gift by Augustus to Phraates IV, the King of Kings. So she is taken there. She is originally a concubine. She then manages to manipulate and scheme her way in court to becoming a queen, so a free woman. Then finally the main wife of the king. She then exiles bit by bit the different princes that would compete with her own son. Once they're all away and her husband has put a will that her son will succeed, she kills her husband at the correct moment. And then she becomes queen regnant together with her son and a goddess.
You know.
Yeah.
Just another Thursday.
Normal things. She then manages to diplomatically stop a Roman invasion, although it is capitulating on several client kingdoms, but, stops a Roman invasion in an unstable time. Although, at the end, unfortunately, she is overthrown and has a mysterious fate. We don't know what happens to her personally. She may have returned to Rome and been hosted as a distant queen, or she may have just been killed during the overthrow. We just don't know. There are some hints that maybe her son was in Rome a few years afterwards, so maybe she joined, but there's no explicit mention of her. And the Romans were so annoyed by her that she is not mentioned in any Roman historical source.
Because how could they cope with the fact that
exactly
a woman is ruling an empire?
Yeah, exactly. We just dealt with Cleopatra. We can't have another woman. We have one woman a millennium.
It would break the world if people knew.
Yes.
What's next? Our own women asking for more rights? No.
But yeah, her final score is a 49.8 out of 100. She had a 0 out of 10 for final moments, 2 out of 20 for battle hardness, 18 out of 20 for scheminess, 20 out of 20 for shock factor, 6 out of 20 for air and shine, and a 3.3 out of 5 for face of faces, and a 0.5 out of 5 for lengthiness.
I was surprised that her air and shine was relatively high. I would expect it to be worse.
It was quite low. I mean, mostly she'd kept the empire broadly stable.
Yeah, which is very impressive. It's not like she had much time to do anything.
No, absolutely. Or any training at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have expected for things to go much worse than they actually did. So that's really impressive.
No, the problem is that she is just overthrown by the nobles who can't handle her. But the thing is, her main demerit is that she sends a bunch of princes off to Rome, and they'll be used for the next 50 years as, tools to declare war on Parthia. So that's not ideal. That's a bit of an issue, but hey. And yeah, so do you think Musa has a chance to fight with our first two contenders, or do you think that she is, she's very cool, but she won't make it past this round?
Yep. I think she's just such a wild story that I don't think people know
It is
about.
a great
To be
story.
honest, most people don't really know that much about the Persian Empire in general anyway. But like,
No, true.
I will never forget Musa. Because
Yeah,
what the
absolutely.
hell?
That's great. There should
Everything
be
in her
many
story is just
many stories about her, yeah.
incredible. Anyway,
So, you think she has a chance to get past this round?
yes, we'll see.
Okay.
Because again,
We'll discuss later.
up with a lot of really impressive.
This is a very
rulers.
difficult round. Yeah, exactly. That's the problem.
But she will always have a place in my heart.
And last but least in score is Narseh. He is the second lowest Shahanshah. And if you remember, he was the third favorite son of Shapur I. So he was originally in that succession list in third place. He was made king of Sakistan first and later Armenia. And he saw the succession of Hormizd I and was later outraged by the rule of the Bahrams, because the Bahrams took control in a sort of coup, and Narseh was just stuck sitting there saying, well, I was preferred to Bahram in Shapur's list. Why is he in charge now? And then he just sees the whole line of succession go there. But in the meantime, he takes very good care of his vassal kingdom, although it does suffer under a separate branch of the family. Like, he fights very well in a great war, but then one of the Bahrams gives away part of Armenia, despite Narseh having done a great job. And it's just like, what do you mean? Why are you giving away parts of my kingdom? I was doing well, just because you failed. Eventually, he does manage to take control and overthrows Bahram III, putting back the quote-unquote legitimate line of the family back on top. As a king, Narseh does a great job at protecting the Manichaeans and weakening Kartir, who had been controlling a lot of religion in the empire at the time, who had become extremely powerful in the Bahrams. He then has a final great war against the Romans over Armenia, but loses so badly that he has to turn back on a lot of his father's gains, and the empire is greatly squished. And will essentially have a chip on its shoulder for a while until Shapur II, his grandson, manages to retake everything and, establish 2 centuries of peace. But Narseh loses a lot. It is quite troublesome. So his total score is a 29 out of 100. The score is divided in a 0 out of 10 for final moments, 9 out of 20 for battle hardness, 4 out of 20 for scheminess, 6 out of 20 for shock factor, 5 out of 20 for air and shine, and 4 out of 5 for faces, and a 1 out of 5 for lengthiness. So what we liked about his story is that it's this constant frustration and this constant plan for revenge against the Bahrams at some point that he actually manages to achieve, but then just collapses miserably at the very end. So what do you think about Narseh? Do you think he has a chance to make it through, or do you think that he is just going to get stuck here? Congratulations for being a Shahanshah, but it's not for you. You have to move onwards. You think so? You think he can't make it through?
This is a tough round. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
We will see.
All right, so out of our top these are our 5 contestants. We've gone through all of them. Serial, is there somebody you think absolutely needs to go through, or somebody that absolutely has no chance to go through?
God.
Let's start with that.
Give me the names again. Let me actually...
So we have Khosrow II, Khosrow Parviz, last great king. Cyrus the Great, founder of the Achaemenid Empire.
Yep.
Peroz I, thought it was a good idea at the time, invited nomads, failed multiple times.
Why is he here?
It was fun.
I mean, I guess he
thought
did
it was
do
fun.
some good things, but like...
I think I see who's
My
not
dude,
getting through Serial,
yeah.
but very well.
My dude.
Then Musa, the only woman Shahanshah, did a great job for herself. Not so great for the empire, but still very cool. And Narseh, big long revenge plot against his brothers and then eventually cousins. Got the throne eventually, crushed at the end.
I am a big fan of Khosrow II.
I also like him very much, yes.
I think we can discuss about Narseh a bit more, but Khosrow II, Cyrus I, and Cyrus the Great, and Musa are my favorites. And out of the three of them, I think Khosrow II feels like... I mean, we also have the most information about him, but also his story is so impressive.
I just love how many ups and downs his story has.
He is a competent king, and he,
Yeah, it's just very tragic because he gets so close to absolute victory, and then he just says, "No, I want more," and then that's his downfall. I love
good
that.
Cautionary tale as well. Actually, I think he is my favorite, with Musa as a close second. I don't know. I could be convinced to make her the one that goes up onward from this round, but I think we have more information on Khosrow, mostly because he reigned for a longer time. So obviously he did more stuff.
Yeah. So first of all, we're saying Khosrow goes through. I would agree with you.
Yes.
You're confirming it. Okay. So Khosrow the Great, Khosrow II, Khosrow Parviz, the victorious. During the royal hunt, he manages to swiftly bring down 2 lions and then carries them out of the tournament with himself.
Yep. Not
knowing that maybe there's a 3rd lion that will hunt him down at some point, but hey, we'll find out how that turns. And I'm assuming that Peroz is going to be last because, as you were describing, why did we even put him here?
Yes. If that's the feeling that I'm having, then I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
I'm sure we had a reason to put him, don't get me wrong, but,
Yeah, as is tradition for himself, he just is running through the forest and his horse falls into a hole. He dies and is never found again. As you would. This leaves 1 position left to choose between Cyrus the Great, Musa, and Narseh. Unless you disagree, I would say Narseh is out. I think, Cyrus and Musa are just too good for Narseh to even compare. Narseh's interesting. I like his revenge plot. I really felt for him while I was researching him. But, So, yeah. I would say that Narseh goes off into the forest, and he is eventually mauled by a pack of gazelles.
He's still impressive, don't get me wrong.
Mauled by a pack of gazelles, but still.
I feel bad about it, but hey, we have to choose among the best of the best. So
yeah, we had a bunch of hard decisions today. Now the last hard decision, Ariel.
I don't like it.
Cyrus or Musa. Do we think that the golden boy who found the Achaemenid Empire, who was so tolerant, who was looked up to by everybody, including Alexander the Great, do you think he deserves to go through, or do we think Musa, who is such a cool person, she's so underrated, she's so unknown by most people, like most
That's
people will have
the thing,
heard of Cyrus.
though. Like everyone knows about Cyrus.
But Musa, massive, slave to goddess is a great pipeline.
Musa has to go through. I am standing on this hill.
You think Musa?
Yes.
Playing devil's advocate against Musa, I will say, what if she ultimately isn't very good for the Empire. We don't have many sources about her. And, well, she does end up overthrown, and we don't know what happens to her. While Cyrus, yes, we don't have many sources, but he was important enough to have myths about him.
I
Musa
know.
was just a blip, ultimately.
I know, but like...
Do you think that Musa's being, so unique and so unknown beats Cyrus's greatness? Because as we saw, Cyrus is the third
They're both
best
good.
ruler.
I know they're both good, but like
while
I feel
Musa
like
ultimately
I
not
feel
very
like
good.
people know about Cyrus already and they don't know about Musa. And if I had to tell them about something, I would like to bring Musa up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's difficult. So, yeah. I'd say we're gonna get a lot of backlash for this, I'm sure, but I think, I agree with you. Musa, nobody knows about Musa, and I think they should. While Cyrus already has his place in the pantheon. He is one of the great kings. Like, even in Western society, Cyrus is known as a typical king. I mean, he is a messiah. That's why he is so well known. You know, he is so impressive. You know, they made, even in like in the 1970s, they made a great parade commemorating Cyrus and the Cyrus cylinder and everything. So I think that he has enough in the real world outside of the podcast that it's fine to just say, Cyrus, you did an amazing job, but we're going to keep you here and Musa will go through. So, all right, Serial. Cyrus goes riding off in the Paradise Gardens. He sees the prey. He is about to catch it, but ultimately a branch comes from a tree and decapitates him. His head ends up in a jar, and he is lost as Musa manages to make it through. She is the only woman, and she makes it through into the next set of rounds, where we'll find out if she'll be successful. But hey, there we go. So it is an upset. It is intense, but hey, there we go. Tough things.
Indeed.
And yeah, so that means that we now have our full set of our second group of rounds. Would you like to know what the groups are, Serial?
Yep. Hit me.
Let's go. So Group A is terrifying.
Yeah.
It is Darius the Great, Mithridates the Great, Khosrow the First, Shapur the First, and Khosrow the Second.
Yeah, what are we
Two
gonna
make it
do?
through, 3 get left behind. Well, we'll find out. We'll have to discuss who's more compelling of those.
Literally, just useless. Anyway.
Next group, Group B, slightly easier, I would say. It has Seleucus the Great, Seleucus Nicator, Kavad the First, Bahram Chobin, Antiochus the Great, and Musa.
Okay.
That is a more calm group. I think Group A is going to be horrifying, battlefields strewn with bodies, but hey,
why are
we
we
need to
doing
narrow it
this
down to
this
one
way?
person, Serial.
Oh,
we need
God.
to do this. Hey, we need to cut them down, Serial. We had to go through. So, place your bets. We're going to find out who eventually makes it through. And we'll see in the new month how that goes. Yeah, at the same time, Serial, we have new ways to be supported because we have a merch store now. You can find it in our
Hooray.
website or in the description of the podcast episode. We have like a bunch of nice posters of our different King of Kings. So you want to know, do you want to have like a poster of all the Sassanid kings or of all the Arsacid kings or of all the Achaemenid or Seleucid kings? They're there now with all of Serial's lovely drawings. They're cool.
Oh my
We also
goodness.
have t-shirts with different portraits on them. We have general posters of Yazdegerd III and Khosrow II there. And then we also have a bunch of different mugs with topical King of King portraits that you can use, which are quite nice. So go there, enjoy it. If instead you'd rather not do that, we have a Patreon you could support us on. Just at the end of this month, we'll be having our pilot episode on Sargon II, an Assyrian king. Go find out how young and inexperienced we were at the time and see how we've improved. Or did you think we've gone backwards since the start? We've just actively lost experience. You can find out now. That'll be fun. And if instead you'd rather not support us monetarily, that's fine. But we'd appreciate if you could give us a review on your podcast app of choice. Let us know who you think should have made it through. Let us know why you think Cyrus was robbed. I mean, Cyrus is a big name. We just got him out in the first round. Oh, goodness. Tell us who you think should make it at the end. Who's going to make it in the next rounds. We just love hearing this, and it's nice to hear that people are listening to the podcast and enjoying all our information.
Indeed.
And yeah, in that case, without any further ado, we hope you have a lovely time, and we'll see you next time with the first of the second group of the rounds.
Oh, I can't take this anymore. Goodbye.
Goodbye.